If you're over 65 and still driving the way you always have, 2026 could be the year you get fined, flagged, or even lose your license without ever realizing you broke a new rule. And the most dangerous part is this: a lot of these updated rules don't look new at all. The roads look the same, the signs look the same. Your habits feel as safe as they've always been, but under the surface, the system has changed quietly, automatically, and in some cases, permanently. Beginning in February 2026, multiple U.S. states are rolling out enforcement systems that no longer depend on verbal warnings, officer judgment, or even face to face traffic stops. Cameras, software, and insurance linked databases are now doing the bulk of the monitoring. That means you can be a generally cautious driver, usually follow the speed limit, never touch your phone while moving, and still end up owing hundreds or even thousands of dollars because of one brief moment you didn't know had become illegal. This video isn't about panic, it's about awareness. The group getting hit the hardest right now is not reckless teens. It's experienced drivers who assume the rules hadn't changed. Here's what makes 2026 different from earlier years. In the past, when driving regulations changed, you usually heard about it. TV reports, public campaigns, grace periods. In 2026, the shift is less about brand new laws and more about how existing ones are enforced. The rules you think you know are being interpreted more strictly, applied more precisely, and punished more expensively than before. For seniors, that matters more than for any other age group, because the ripple effects reach into your insurance premiums, your license renewals, and in some cases, even medical and identity reviews tied to your license. Across the country, states are under pressure to reduce crashes, fund road repairs, and limit legal exposure. Their answer has been automation. Automated enforcement doesn't care how long you've been driving. It doesn't factor in your clean record. It doesn't give you a friendly warning. It doesn't explain anything. It simply captures, records, and forwards violations, often directly into your DMV and insurance files. Once that happens, untangling it is no longer simple. Many drivers still assume that if something really serious were happening, they'd be clearly warned in advance. But in 2026, the warning usually arrives after the damage is already done. A ticket in your mailbox, a registration renewal that's suddenly refused, an insurance bill that quietly jumps 25%. For seniors on fixed incomes, these aren't little annoyances. They're budget-breaking shocks. And it gets more complicated. Many of the biggest changes aren't federal. They're taking effect state by state, sometimes county by county. What's perfectly legal where you live may earn you a citation as soon as you cross into the next state. That's where most people get caught. They depend on what's always been true. They rely on experience. But experience doesn't protect you when enforcement is automated. The system doesn't care that you've driven safely for 40 years. It only cares what the camera, the sensor, or the database captured at that moment. That's why so many drivers in early 2026 are saying the same thing. I didn't even know that was illegal. And that's exactly why this matters now. Before February turns into March, before renewal letters show up, before a quick trip to the store turns into a financial headache. Because once a violation is in the system, you can't talk your way out of it. You can't explain context to a camera. You can't argue with an algorithm. The only real protection left is preventing the violation in the first place. In the rest of this video, I'm going to walk you through the most important driving rule and enforcement changes, taking effect in 2026, with a special focus on how they affect drivers 65 and older. This isn't rumor or guesswork. These are policies that have already been approved, funded, and in many places, switched on. Some are genuinely about safety. Others are clearly about efficiency and revenue. But all of them punish drivers who aren't paying close attention. You'll learn which ordinary habits are now counted as violations, how insurers are being alerted faster than ever, why older drivers are facing stricter license renewal rules, and which simple, low-cost adjustments can save you thousands of dollars over the coming years. Most importantly, you'll know what to watch for so you don't end up learning these rules the expensive way. And next, we'll start with the change that is already catching more drivers than any other in early 2026. It doesn't involve speeding, it doesn't involve alcohol, and it doesn't require an accident. In fact, many drivers have no idea they've done anything wrong until they open the envelope. Hi, I'm Sophia. Over the past several weeks, I've been going through official DMV announcements, state transportation updates, insurance industry bulletins, and new legislation to understand what is actually changing on American roads in 2026. And more importantly, how those changes affect regular drivers, especially seniors. I'm not here to scare you or drown you in legal terms. I'm here to explain in plain language what's happening so you can protect your license, your finances, and your independence. Because in 2026, the biggest danger isn't wild, reckless driving. It's continuing to drive exactly the way you always have, assuming the rules still work the same way. Let's start with the enforcement shift that is spreading faster than almost anything else and has already caught tens of thousands of drivers off guard. Distracted driving. Distracted driving is no longer being treated as a minor secondary issue. For years, many states followed secondary enforcement rules. That meant an officer couldn't stop you solely for using your phone. They needed another reason first, like a broken taillight or rolling through a stop sign. That buffer is disappearing. As 2026 begins, more than a dozen more states have moved to primary enforcement, and even states that already had strict hands-free laws are ramping up enforcement. In everyday terms, that means if an officer sees a phone in your hand, or even the light of a screen on your lap at night, that alone is now enough to justify a stop. No speeding, no swerving, no other violation required. On top of that, in several states, the official definition of use has been expanded. It's no longer limited to actively texting while driving, holding your phone to check directions, scrolling through a playlist while you're stopped at a red light, tapping the screen to dismiss a notification while traffic is paused. All of that can now count as distracted driving under the updated rules being enforced in 2026. This is where many longtime drivers get into trouble. For decades, a red light or traffic jam felt like a safe moment to peek at your phone. You weren't moving, so it didn't feel like driving. The law no longer agrees. If you're in the driver's seat, in control of the vehicle, and the phone is in your hand, you are legally operating the vehicle, even if your foot is on the brake. That one shift has changed everything. And the penalties are no longer token. We're not talking about a $50 slap on the wrist. First-time distracted driving tickets in many areas now fall in the $200 to $500 range before any added court or administrative fees. But the real cost often doesn't show up on the ticket. It shows up months later when your insurance renews. Insurers now treat distracted driving as high-risk behavior, on par with serious speeding or at-fault crashes. Industry data shows that a single distracted driving citation can push your premiums up by 15 to 30%, and those increases typically stay in place for 3 to 5 years. If you currently pay around $500 a year for car insurance, that's an extra $225–$450 every year. Over a few years, a single moment of checking your phone can easily cost well over $1,000. For seniors, that bite is even sharper. Many older drivers already face higher base premiums due to age-based risk models. Add a distracted driving mark on top of that, and the effect multiplies. And unlike some minor violations, distracted driving tickets are rarely wiped away early. Once they're on your record, they tend to stay. The good news is that most of these violations are completely avoidable with small changes. If your car doesn't have built-in Bluetooth or voice controls, this is the year to stop improvising. A basic dashboard or vent-mounted phone holder that keeps your phone off your lap and out of your hand costs less than a tank of gas. Nearly every modern phone can handle calls, read texts out loud, and run navigation using voice commands, so you don't ever have to touch the screen while driving. It takes some getting used to, but it's much cheaper than a ticket and years of higher insurance bills. You also need a mindset shift. When you're stopped at a light, treat it as part of driving, not a break from it. Hands on the wheel, eyes up, phone untouched. That one habit change can wipe out the most common, distracted driving scenarios that are leading to tickets right now. Because in 2026, officers are not just watching for obvious, dangerous behavior. They're looking for strict compliance. And technical violations are expensive. This stricter distracted driving enforcement is already active in many states, and more join every month. Even if you haven't been cited yet, the odds are increasing. And as uncomfortable as this is, it's only the start. The next phase of enforcement doesn't involve officers at all. Once it's in place, there is no discussion, no warning, and no chance to explain yourself on the roadside. If you still think speed limits are enforced the way they were 5 or 10 years ago, what comes next is where things really change. Automated speed enforcement has existed for a while, but in 2026, it's entering a new level. This is no longer just a few cameras at busy intersections. States are deploying AI-driven speed monitoring systems, especially in construction zones built to measure speed accurately and automatically, with almost no room for argument. In states like Michigan, these systems are already running in work zones on major highways. Cameras paired with radar or laser devices measure your speed as soon as you enter the zone and track you all the way through. If workers are present and you go over the posted limit, even slightly, the system logs your speed and license plate. There's no officer deciding whether to let you off with a warning. The ticket simply arrives by mail later. What makes this especially risky for experienced drivers is the way these zones actually function. The cameras are active only when workers are present, which sounds reasonable. But in practice, workers present can mean just one person behind a barrier. Temporary signs may look the same whether the system is active or not, and work locations often change from week to week. Relying on memory, they never ticket in this stretch, just isn't safe anymore. The fine structure is designed to escalate. In some states, the first violation is just a warning letter. That can lull people into ignoring it. The second violation may carry a civil fine around $150. The third can jump to $300 or more. Some states treat these as non-moving violations without points, but others already send the data directly to insurers. So even if your license record doesn't show points, your insurance record does show a pattern. For seniors, this creates a hidden financial threat. You might never be pulled over or talk to a police officer, but your insurance company sees multiple speed-related citations and adjusts your premium upward. And because this is a machine-logged violation, there's usually very little room to successfully contest it. The safest posture in 2026 is simple. Treat every construction zone limit as strict. If the sign says 45, don't drive 50 with the flow of traffic. Stay at 45. The old idea that 5 or 10 miles over is okay isn't compatible with automated systems. And it's not only construction zones. Cities and school districts are expanding automated enforcement into school zones and residential areas where the main rule is timing, not just signage. School zone speed cameras are spreading throughout states like Ohio, Pennsylvania, Florida, and more. Often, they don't run all day. Instead, they activate based on school schedules, typically 30 minutes before school starts, through the school day, and about 30 minutes after classes end. During those times, the posted speed limit can drop sharply, sometimes to 15 or 20 km/h. Going just 10 km/h over that can trigger a citation. You don't see an officer, you don't get pulled over, you just get a notice in the mail days later. Many drivers say they never saw the sign, or they entered the zone right as the reduced limit started, or they were in the process of slowing down. Unfortunately, courts have generally ruled that it's the driver's responsibility to anticipate and follow school zone rules and schedules. The systems are considered valid, and appeals rarely succeed unless there's clear evidence of a malfunction. Again, the fines aren't always massive, Hinun. Initial tickets might run $50 to $250, but the real problem is repetition. A handful of school zone camera tickets over a year sends a clear signal to insurers, and because they're automated, they can accumulate quickly. To reduce this risk, use the tools already available. Many navigation apps now highlight school zones and known camera points. Treat those alerts seriously. When your phone or GPS announces a school zone, check the time, watch for the sign, and slow down early. And if you often drive through neighborhoods near schools in the mornings or afternoons, build in enough time so you're not tempted to push the limit. What we're seeing is a broad shift from officer-based judgment to system-based enforcement. The question isn't, what did you mean to do? It's, did you technically break the rule? In 2026, that difference matters more than ever. As unsettling as these camera-based systems are, the next change goes beyond cameras and speed limits. It changes what it means to be legally sober as a driver and narrows the safe margin to the point where many casual drinkers won't realize they've crossed it. For years, U.S. drivers have lived with one key number in mind: 0.08. That was the legal blood alcohol limit. Stay under it, and you were generally safe. Go over it, and you were in trouble. In 2026, that line is shifting. Several states are moving toward lower legal BAC limits, and some are enforcing the existing laws more aggressively. The change is often modeled on what Utah did when it lowered its limit from 0.08 to 0.05. After that change, Utah saw a meaningful drop in fatal crashes involving alcohol. Safety groups praised the results, and now states like Washington, New York, and Hawaii are pushing for similar standards or already applying stricter interpretations. For older drivers, this is especially important. A BAC of 0.05 doesn't feel intoxicated to most people. It might be one beer at dinner, a glass of wine, or two drinks over a long meal. Under older assumptions, many people would have driven home without thinking twice. Under newer, lower limits, that same choice can put you over the legal line. As we age, our bodies process alcohol differently. Metabolism slows down. Common medications can interact with alcohol. Body composition changes. A pattern of drinking that was once safe enough to stay legal may now push your BAC higher and keep it elevated for longer. And all of the rules of thumb, number of drinks per hour, weight charts, etc., are rough estimates, not guarantees. Worse, while the legal limit is lower in these states, the penalties have not gotten lighter. Crossing 0.05 in those jurisdictions can still mean immediate license suspension, mandatory ignition interlock devices, even for first-time offenders, fines from $500 to $2,000 or more, mandatory classes or treatment, possible jail time, and insurance premiums that can double or triple for several years. In other words, the law is starting to treat 0.05 the way it used to treat 0.08. There is no longer a reliable way to calculate your way to safety. For seniors, the fallout from a DUI can be particularly severe. It can complicate license renewal, greatly increase insurance costs, and, for those who still work or volunteer, affect any role involving driving. That's why the safest standard in 2026 is also the most straightforward. If you're going to drink at all, don't drive. Decide how you're getting home before you start drinking. Use a rideshare. Ask someone else to drive. Stay overnight. The cost of a ride home is tiny compared to the financial, legal, and emotional cost of a DUI. If explanations like this help you and you want to keep up with these shifts as they continue, make sure you stay tuned. The rules are changing quickly, and in this environment, staying informed is as important as driving carefully. Now, let's talk about a very different kind of hit to the wallet. One aimed at drivers who thought they were saving money by switching to electric vehicles. For years, EV drivers enjoyed lower day-to-day costs, tax credits, and the feeling that they'd escaped gas-related expenses. In 2026, that advantage is shrinking in many states. For nearly 100 years, U.S. roads have been funded mainly by gas taxes. Every time you bought fuel, part of that money went toward highways and bridges. Electric vehicles don't use gas, so EV owners have been using the roads without contributing through fuel taxes. As electric cars have become more common, states have faced shortfalls. Their response has been new annual road use fees for EVs. By January 2026, over 40 states have some type of EV fee in place, and they show up directly on registration renewals. The amounts vary, but many range from $100 to $200 per year. Some states use sliding scales based on the vehicle's original price or age. Others have automatic increases built in, so the fee rises each year. In some places, owners of newer or luxury EVs may see annual charges approaching $250 or more. States often explain that on average, gas vehicle drivers still pay more over a year in fuel taxes than EV drivers do in these fees. That may be accurate, but for EV owners, especially seniors living on carefully planned budgets, it still feels like a new, unexpected bill. What matters most is that you're aware of it. That way, it doesn't knock your budget off track. There's another piece to this trend that reaches everyone, not just EV owners. Several states are using 2026 to pilot mileage-based road use charges. Instead of taxing fuel, they're experimenting with taxing how far you drive. The more miles, the more you pay, regardless of whether you drive on gas or electricity. Some pilots involve drivers voluntarily reporting their odometer readings. Others use plug-in devices or telematics. For now, most programs are small or optional, but they point toward a future where your annual mileage could directly determine part of what you pay to use public roads. The key is to read your renewal paperwork line by line and check for any new fees or programs. If you're considering buying an electric vehicle, include the annual road use fee in your total cost estimates. And if your state invites you into a mileage-based pilot, make sure you understand what you're agreeing to before you sign up. Because, as the next change shows, the system isn't just watching what you pay or how fast you drive. In some places, it's now prepared to remove your car from the road entirely on the spot. This next change makes the law feel very real. In several states, 2026 marks a major expansion of what counts as reckless driving and what officers can do about it in the moment. Law enforcement agencies are being given broader authority to impound vehicles immediately if specific dangerous behaviors are observed, even if no one is hurt and no collision occurs. Behaviors that once earned a citation for exhibition of speed or simple careless driving are now being classified as much more serious. Things like spinning tires, drifting in empty lots, flooring the gas from a stop, or joining informal street meetups can now lead to having your car towed on the spot. In some states, officers don't have to prove you were racing someone else. They just need to reasonably decide that what you did was intentional and unsafe under the updated definitions. In real life, that means if an officer decides your driving crosses this line, your car can be taken away immediately and held for days, or even up to a month. There's no take it home and fix it. You're left on the side of the road while your vehicle is towed. A lot of people think this only applies to younger drivers chasing video clips or doing stunts. That's not entirely true. Seniors can be pulled into this as well. A sharp burst of acceleration, a brief tire slip that looks like a stunt on wet pavement, or just being parked near a group of drivers who are misbehaving. In some jurisdictions, even spectators at illegal street events can face penalties. The costs are steep. Towing charges can reach into the hundreds of dollars. Storage fees of $50, $100 a day over a 30-day impound period can add $500 to $3,000. That's before any fines, court costs, or insurance consequences. Repeat incidents can quickly move into felony territory with multi-year license suspensions and potential jail time. The message is clear. Roadways are for transportation, not showmanship, and enforcement tolerance is extremely low. If you come across what looks like a risky gathering or behavior, the safest thing to do is leave immediately. Don't watch, don't film, and don't assume being nearby is harmless. Once your vehicle is linked to an incident in the system, undoing that association is difficult and expensive. After all of this tighter enforcement, there is one area where older drivers may see some relief, but it comes with new responsibilities that can cause problems if ignored. Some states are updating how they assess senior drivers. For years, certain states required mandatory behind-the-wheel tests starting at relatively young senior ages. Over time, data has shown that many older drivers are in fact more cautious and less prone to aggressive driving than average. In response, a number of states are raising the age at which these mandatory road tests kick in, sometimes into the late 70s or even 80s. On paper, that's good news. It reduces stress and acknowledges that age alone isn't a complete measure of driving ability. However, at the same time, those same states are tightening other renewal requirements, particularly vision screening and in-person identity checks. In states like California and Florida, once you reach a certain age bracket, you can no longer complete your renewal entirely online or by mail. You must show up in person. Officials say they want to confirm eyesight, basic physical fitness for driving, and identity, partly as a safety measure and partly as a fraud prevention step. This is where many seniors get tripped up. DMV appointments can be hard to schedule. It's easy to set the notice aside and forget. But under many new rules, if your license expires because you didn't appear in person when required,
Mm.
it doesn't just lapse temporarily, it fully expires. Restoring it may mean taking the written test, the road test, and submitting full documentation again, essentially starting over. For seniors who depend on driving for independence, doctor visits, shopping, social life, or caregiving, that can be devastating. And it's often completely preventable. The solution is simple. When renewal notices arrive, read every line. If it says in person appearance required, treat that as urgent. Don't assume you can handle it in the last week. Book the appointment as early as possible. Families need to be aware of this as well. If you have parents, grandparents, or older relatives who still drive, talk to them about licenses and renewals long before there's a crisis. Help them with scheduling, offer to drive them to appointments, and make sure they understand that missing an in-person requirement now has bigger consequences than it used to. All of this reflects a broader reality. In 2026, driving privileges are being monitored and managed more actively at every age. Systems are watching records more closely, checking identities more often, and enforcing compliance more strictly. For older drivers, that makes preparation especially important. There's one more change that quietly touches every driver, no matter how old you are, what you drive, or how clean your record is. It has to do with how your license functions as an identity document, and how not meeting new standards can make it invalid without any traffic stop at all. For decades, renewing your license was straightforward. Fill out a form, pay a fee, maybe show a bill or two. That era is ending. Many states are moving to what they call a high security identity framework, and that fundamentally changes how licenses are issued and renewed. In practical terms, this means more stringent documentation and less flexibility about timing. In some states, renewal now requires top-tier proof of identity, certified birth certificates, social security numbers verified directly with federal records, and for non-citizens, immigration documents that tightly tie license validity to immigration status. If a visa expires in 6 months, a license may now also expire in 6 months, with no automatic grace period.